Well, hello, a very good afternoon, everybody joining us on Facebook, YouTube and Twitch. This is our first stream, Saturday afternoon, first stream. It's a cold and wet day in Manchester, pretty much the same as what it's going to be in Heathrow when we get there. And we're all very welcome on board the short flight. So I'm going to give you a quick brief right after this. Well, everybody, as I said, good afternoon. It's our first live stream. It is a simulator. Things will go wrong. You will have the chance to put it into the chat. Let us know what you see, what you don't see. However, we're going to take you from a cold and dark setup this afternoon in the Airbus A320 from Manchester to Heathrow. We have filed a flight plan with SimBrief. We will import that through our computer later on, but we'll show you that when we get to it. And feel free to pop any questions you may have into the chat, and we'll try and get to those while we're in the cruise and probably a less busier phase. However, today is a short flight. It is going to be fairly busy. We're going to be also tuned in with VATSIM, so they're going to try and provide us with a little bit of live ATC as we go along and try to make the experience that little bit more real. I am a real world pilot. I've been in the business for over 16 years. However, today is just for fun, but we'll try and bring some of that real world experience into the flight sim. So here we are in our cold and dark cockpit. We entered today, and basically all we have is the ground power connected. So let's get that on and get that going. And let's switch on a few of the electrical systems here. Brighten that up. That looks much nicer there. So once we come into the cockpit, very important that we have a little scan and a little look around just to make sure everything is set up the way it's in a safe position and before we start anything further. First and foremost, let's have a look at our park and brake is set and the engine master switches are off. Throttles are idle and coming up then towards the overhead panel. So here's where most of our switching will be done. Oxygen. We'll go up the left hand side first and then we'll come down through the middle, and that way we should catch everything that will be incorporated in our checklists later on. So let's have a look at crew supply. We'll get the ADIRSs going. These take approximately around 7 minutes, so might as well get all of this kind of stuff done. We'll leave the fuel pumps off just for now because we will be calling for some fuel later. And the emergency exit lights, we'll stick those to arm should we have an emergency throughout the flight and we have to land. At least those lights will be all operational. We'll keep the seatbelt sign off for the moment because we do have to take some fuel. I did look at the flight plan earlier on.
Manchester traffic, this is Speedbird 892, passing
something in the region of
level
approximately around
790
3.9 tons required. We don't have
190.
quite enough, but we're going to look at the weather and then maybe even select a little bit more fuel, and we'll get into those reasons why later on. So looking at the overhead panel, that's pretty much exactly where we want, except it is cold out there, and I think if we get the old APU going, not only can we get some heat going, but we can also get a nice cup of tea later. So getting into the meat, as I said, I filed a flight plan earlier on with SimBrief, and we'll import it here under the flight plan. We have a little bit of brief look at it as to what's happening. We can see there's some weather here in the UK. It's looking a little bit nasty there just up to the northwest of us, and that is flowing down towards in a southeasterly direction. So on our start page here, if we just copy the flight plan in from SimBrief, we do have to check we have the right one. It is from Manchester, and we are going to Heathrow. The weather in Manchester, pressure is 1011 and winds just from the south there at 6 knots. So it's not too bad at temperatures. It is a cool 7 degrees. Pretty much the same kind of forecast going into Heathrow later on. So I'm expecting the westerly runways, possibly 27 right, I would imagine. But we'll get that as we get going along, and we might even request some of that information from the guys over in VATSIM. So setting up further. Oh, where's my mouse? There we go. Setting up further, we have a look at the overview. It is the correct aircraft that we're flying today. It is the Airbus A320. We have a little look inside. There we go. We're parked on stand 8 now in Manchester. Just using the standard livery there from the fly-by-wire guys. They've created an incredibly good aircraft, taking some of the real-world experience into the simulator experience, and you can actually see they've spent a lot of time in replicating the system. So I'm very, very impressed when I first actually took this out of the box and had a look at it. So we have the correct aircraft, and we're looking now at the operational flight plan. So before we go into that, I just want to have a look over to the chat there. So Fly UK, very good. VATSIM overpowering the voice when it kicks in. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We might try and turn down those guys down a little bit. We'll just switch those off, and we'll come back to those later on. Okay, so we are looking at the departure here today. The routing is going to take us off Manchester and runway 23 left. I'd imagine it's going to be 23 right, to be honest. However, the Samba 1 Yankee departure, small routing then from Samba towards Honley, and we'll do the Honley 1 Hotel arrival then onto 27 right. We do have those charts all prepped here. We got those ready before we came on there, and we'll show you a little bit more about those as we go into the briefing. So the overall meat of the flight, we're looking at planned zero fuel weight of 58.8 tons and a takeoff weight of approximately around 62.2. I do imagine that's going to be approximately around a ton heavier, because when we look down at the fuel here, it does say just under 3.7 tons. However, there is no extra going into Heathrow. Heathrow does require us to have at least 20 minutes extra, and could be a little bit busy Saturday afternoon there with VATSIM. So if I add on another 30 minutes of fuel, and we're looking in the guts of around 5 tons. How about we go 5 tons to make it nice and even? So to get that going, just to show you the graphics, that the guys over at Fly-by-Wire have really done an incredible job here. Just by letting them know, we're going to open the doors for the passengers to board. We left the baggage, and the external power, we leave that as it is, and the catering also at the back. So we get those going, and on the fueling, we did say 5 tons. Going into the fueling page, if we just bring that up to 5 tons. Oh, that's strange things happening here in the keyboard. As I said, it is live. Strange things will happen. So 5 tons of fuel is what we're going to request off the fueler, and we'll get him to start fueling that now. Approximately 2 minutes. Excellent. So the main meat of the setting up the flight is going to be down on the MACD. And if we just come along and let's call in the data, which is, again, I'm very impressed. I've been in flight sim for over 20 years now and got back into it in the last couple of weeks. I have never seen anything the way it's set up now, from the computer and various other outside sources, all interlinked with each other, and it really does make a great experience. So setting up the MACD, I've noticed on some of the streams, a lot of people have a bit of a difficulty understanding what's going on here. So I'm going to try and take my time a little bit for those who are interested in. From the fly-by-wire system, we initially need to go into the MACD menu page, across to the ATSU, and then when we come in here, the first thing we must look at is the initialization request. Okay. Once we do that and press this button here, it takes the data directly from VATSIM in, and this is the plan that we had earlier on from Manchester to Heathrow. Time is going to be 34 minutes, and its estimating fuel is 4.4. So that's the total plan. That's the first thing. Second thing, let's have a look over the weight and balance. I don't know how many passengers is on today, so let's have a look. If we send off for the information, we do have 163 passengers, and I do believe, yeah, the steps are all connected outside. So why don't we just start that going, and they're going to start boarding. I'm very impressed the way as each passenger gets on, it updates the zero fuel weight of the aircraft. So we'll go back to that when they're all boarded, and we'll have a little look how that ties in with air performance. So once we get that going, I will say that is just a simulator method of doing things. In the real world, you wouldn't really actually do that with the Airbus. However, what you can do nowadays with all the newest technology is you can request your flight plan by basically placing in the departure, the destination, or the company route should they have them stored. And once that's in, we will press initialization request. The fact there is only one flight plan at any one time being sent over by SimBrief, just by pressing that alone, it will give you the last sim plan that you have created. So I did ask for Manchester, Heathrow, and Gatwick as being the alternate. We're going to be called the Shamrock 101 today. Cost index is 34 and flight level of 190. That all looks correct. That's just letting us know we have uplinked correctly. The IRS is to initialize. Looking at the charts, I've been asked before, what are these numbers? Basically, it's picked up the airport reference point, and it's asking you, do you want to align to that reference point? In other words, tell me where you are. If you want to be more accurate, you could pick up the airport reference point of the stand that you're actually on and put that in instead. However, for today's navigation and the way things run, this is perfectly fine, but as a good rule of thumb, we'd normally cross-check that. I do not see that on the plate. Normally it's around a reference to a midpoint here on the runway, and we'll come back to that later on, but I will just let it go ahead and start aligning, as it does take a little bit of time. So we'll align that and we'll confirm it. Excellent. So has it uploaded? Yes, it has. We are looking at Manchester, Samba, Taxa, Honolly, and that's basically our routing out of here today. So if we look at the flight plan, and our flight plan does actually say Samba, Honolly, and then we'll make our approach into Heathrow. So that's all good. That has loaded up correctly. We are planning a Samba departure today off runway 23 right, and we'll have a look at the it's going to be the Samba departure, my apologies. So we'll just scroll down here further, and here we go, the Samba 1 departure. So we'll get to that, exactly what it means now in a moment. We'll insert that, and then from Heathrow we'll arrive on runway 27 right. So 27 right, and I'm expecting the Honolly arrival, as it's one of the last points in our flight plan, and there's the Honolly 1 hotel. So we will select that and we'll place that up, where we go, into here. So the Honolly 1 hotel. So that's our routing. Question then from Fly UK: do you see the passengers boarding on the computer in real life? They scan at the gate. No, you don't. It's the guys over Fly-by-Wire. I think it's probably at the last of their list. However, I think he still should be up to the side. So that's a bit of an anomaly there. The passengers are still boarding, unfortunately. So let's just double check how we're getting along with that. So to get back into that again, it's just on the MACD. I go to the Yatsu, and under the weight and balance is where we'll actually see the progress of the boarding. So we can see there's only a total of 47, and 2 is 49 at this moment in time. As each one of those goes up, we'll see the zero fuel weight going up. So leaving that's plenty more to do before we actually get going. So the flight plan there, it's telling me it's a distance of 161 nautical miles. That should really tie in fairly close to what we have here on the plan. And if it does, hey, the mouse is just going haywire on me. So that should really tie in what we have here. Let's have a little look. Total is about 152. That's fairly reasonable. There is a few little differences between some of the departures and some of the arrivals that will give us that just anomaly. However, the overall distance is fairly reasonable, so we'll certainly buy into that. Now, we've got the routing in. Looking at our rad navigation. So is there anything on this page that can help us here today? Well, let's have a look. This is where we tune in our VORs, and we tune in any rad navs that may help us here today. Looking at the Samba departure information, Manchester VOR, it's actually defined here as part of the departure. And if we look down here, the Samba 1 Romeo, it says climb straight ahead and at 3 miles off Manchester. So 3 miles off the DME here, we need to start making a turn to the right to pick up a track of 274. So looking at everything here, and let's make sure this all ties in together. Looking at the flight plan, Manchester 23 right, Manchester 3, so that's their way of saying it's 3 miles off the Manchester VOR. We're going to pick up a track of 273, and that looks fairly reasonable there. Takes us out towards another point where we take a left turn to Tolby, track 211, and then we from Tolby all the way out towards Honley, a track of 143 to 4 miles, and that brings us to this point, and then from this point onto a point called Samba. We also see along that routing, we do have a constraint that we must be between, so 5,000 feet to 3,000 feet. At that point there, Honley 58, and we actually see there's a little magenta star there telling us that 3,000 feet is programmed into the box. And then from there to Samba, we're not to be above 5,000 and we're not to be below 5,000, so we should be exactly at 5,000 feet. All that is subject to air traffic control. They may cancel that SID on you, they may tell you to do something different. However, in the event of a lost comms that you cannot speak to them for any reason while you depart, you follow that and continue on with your flight plan. So I'm very happy that the departure is programmed correctly in there. If we just look at a few more of these notes that's on the plate. The departure speed, maximum 250 knots below flight level 100. We'll certainly comply with that. It also says no turns below 760 feet. That's fair enough, we won't do that. And there's a warning, do not climb above altitude of 5,000 feet until instructed by ATC. And we showed you that restriction that is in their box. So we're fairly happy that when we stick it in the autopilot, we can manage everything and let it all do itself. Speed profiles is given the information there. There's nothing there really that's going to affect us. However, the whole departure, it says climb straight ahead and at 3 miles turn right, 274 track. And if you go through all of that, that's exactly what we just briefed earlier on, basically looking at that picture ahead of us. So I won't continue. I won't harp on about that. We'll just continue on. The RADNAVs, we did say we want Manchester, so we would just program in Manchester there for pure reference. And it's right beside us, so that's the one that's 0 nautical miles away. And that will, when we switch on the VOR, we get 2 VORs. As we can see, we're 0.5 miles away. We're going to tune in Honley on the second one, so let's put in Honley because that is part of our departure. We put in Honley, 64 miles away. It ain't 3,500, that's for sure, so we'll select this one here. And Honley is there. Notice we don't have any distance because we are actually too low to the ground and it's too far away. Once we get airborne, we'll get a distance off those so we can actually cross-reference those should we need to. Moving on to our progress page. What I like to do here is put in the Manchester runway, the one that I'm departing, 23 right, and we place it in here. The reason for this, it just gives us a bearing and a distance. You can put any point in there and it'll tell you how far away it is and where bearing you can turn onto to actually go direct to it. It's just in case we have an emergency on the departure, I can quickly reference that and just say this is the direction we need to go. So the performance today, we're going to reduce our thrust reduction at 1,720 feet and we're going to accelerate at the same altitude. If we have an engine out, it is saying here 1,500 feet will accelerate, but you know what, just for the sake of even numbers, we're going to bring that up to the same as our thrust reduction and altitude. I believe most companies would actually do that as well. Certainly the one that I work for does. We would have those pretty much the same unless it's stipulated in an airport where they want you to accelerate at a higher altitude, and that would be just for pure noise abatement. The secondary flight plan, it is not modelled, unfortunately. Maybe hopefully that's something that the guys on fly-by-wire can actually start working on in the future. The secondary flight plan can be really, really useful in the sense of I could put in an immediate return to Manchester should we have a serious failure on departure, and all I would have to do then is just activate the secondary. So basically you can actually program the box, have 2 flight plans in there, and use them at your discretion. So for now, I believe we are finished here, and we are actually, let's see how we're getting on with the passengers. It looks like they were a little bit slow earlier on boarding. I was expecting to be getting on much faster than that. So well, we're getting there. 7 more towards the, oh no, we've got the middle of it to go. Hey, we leave it at it. There's so much more to do. So now we're going to have a look at what we're going to expect. But before we get into that, okay, some comments from Dan there. Does 737 have a secondary flight plan? That, Dan, I do not know. It's the 737. It's one that I have never actually flown in the past, so it's something I can't confirm for you. Maybe any guys who may tune in here, maybe they could give Fly UK the answer to that question. I would imagine it would have something similar to it, or certainly a function that would actually provide the same service that what I can use the secondary flight plan on the Airbus. So let's get into our briefing today. We did some of it, which was handy with regards to this. However, let's go right to the very, very start, the airport brief. Let's start at the beginning. A very good place to start, as Julie Andrews once said. We are now on Pier B, and from Pier B, we're on stand 8, which is approximately just around here. When we do push back, we're going to be taxiing around Lima, Papa, over towards Kilo, and then from Kilo we'll take it all the way down towards the Juliets until we get to the holding point here. That is defined, that magenta circle that has HS2, HS3, they're defined as hotspots, as we can see here. And a hotspot is basically, this is a point at where we can have some ATC conflictions. In other words, you could cross the line, you could enter the runway by accident there. It may not be a great visibility signal to stop at that point. So it's basically taking your attention to say, pay attention when you get towards one of these hotspots. Because you just do not want to be filling out the paperwork. It's easier just to comply with the plate. Once we get on the runway, I'm going to check the flex is set by 80 knots, call 100 V1 rotate. We'll monitor the engine and flight instruments. In an event of a failure before V1, I'll call stop or go. In event of a stop, I'll close the thrust levers and select max reverse. And I'll monitor the spoilers, reverse green, decel and 70 knots. I'll take no further actions until the aircraft has come to a stop, the reversals are cancelled and the parking brake is set. In the event of a failure at or after V1, I will continue to take off, I'll raise the landing gear and I'll silence any oral warnings, and I'll consider primary ECAM actions once we're above 400 feet. Other than that, the threats for today is going to be maybe a little bit of weather out there. We would have the radar on, however, unfortunately, and I think the guys over in Fly-by-Wire are still working on this at the moment. The radar is technically US, it's not working on the system. But look, today we live without it, and we'll see how we get along. So the departure we actually discussed earlier on in regards to the Samba departure and how it actually depicted within the MACD. So we won't go continue on briefing that. So overall, the other threats to the aircraft, it is an all good operation, and passengers are nearly board. So we are now going to call for our air traffic control clearance with VATSIM. So let's just connect it to these guys, and hopefully they'll I'll give that a moment to spark up. We did say 5,000 feet was going to be the initial climb clearance according to those charts that we looked at earlier on. So I'll just put in something close to that. It's not 5,000, it's 4,000. I just don't have my ATC clearance, and it's a little reminder just to say go and get it. So again, this is live, so of course things do have to go wrong. VATSIM is not going to work for us today here on the computer. I can just see it's a little bit of a problem. However, look, listen, we'll continue on, and we won't worry about that at this moment in time. So I'll give myself the clearance. It's going to be 5,000 feet, and I'm going to give myself a squawk of just 2,000. So we'll switch that onto auto. So in other words, ATC at this point in time will see us now starting to come alive, parked on the stand, and that would basically signify to them, okay, I will be looking for a clearance, but as I said, we're not going to be doing that. So the fueling is complete. Looking at the remainder of the overhead setup, once the fuel is on, we put the APU bleed on, so we get the nice air flowing through the cabin. We get rid of the external power and put the remainder of the fuel pumps are on. What I really do like about the Airbus is that it has a concept of all lights out on the overhead panel. If a light is on, probably an action needs to be taken regardless of rectifying this situation. And when we push back and start up, we should have all of these lights out. The reason we do have a fault on Gen 1 and Gen 2, obviously the engines are not turning at this point in time. With the exception of the APU and its services, they will be on, and all the rest of the lights are out. If there was a fault, for instance, on an ELAC, let's switch off that. That's not from, let's say on GPWS, no, that's not going to give us a fault. Let's have a look. APU Gen, that's not a good idea. Okay, listen, if we have a fault, as you can see, it will come up in amber, and once we rectify it, it'll actually go back out again. So let's have a look. How are we doing with the boarding? And weight and balance. We are fully boarded. We are fully boarded. So let's get rid of some of the services over on the flight pad. I really do enjoy this again. Another feature that they have done with fly-by-wire. Basically activate everything there. They automatically close the door. The passengers are gone. The fuel truck is gone. Baggage. We are good to go. We are good to go. So with that being said, we will do the before start checklist to make sure everything is in order. So before start checks says the cockpit preparation. You'll have a little look up there, all with the exception of those lights as we said earlier on, and we'll switch on the cockpit voice recorder for the ground because we are going to be starting to do things now. The electronic flight bag is on. The gear pins and covers are removed. The signs is now on, auto, and armed. The fuel quantity is checked. We did ask for just under 5 tons. There's 4.9 tons there, and it is balanced. And there we go, balanced there, and that looks good. Our legal minimum was 3.7, and we are good to go there. The ADIRs, there's 3 of them are in the line. We aligned those earlier on, and the bar reference today, the QNH in Manchester is 1011. So we set 1011 once, twice, and then the first officer on his side will actually set it there. But it's by default, it will just image what's going on here. So, oh, we don't have the train, that's an up as well. Okay, fair enough. So that's before start checks to the line, and below the line is the mobile phone, and iPad is going off, take off data. Now, this is where we need to have a look at what we have loaded on board and get our performance. So, right here, this is very important that we tell the aircraft what the zero fuel weight is and the center of gravity and what fuel we have on board, because that will then give us calculations to perform our V speeds of V1, VR and V2. So let's have a look at the weight and balance now as the aircraft is loaded. Let's get that out of the way. So the aircraft is loaded. We do have our fuel on board. The empty weight of the aircraft is 42.5 tons. The fuel that with the maximum fuel we could put on today is 19.1, which we're going to be nowhere near that. We've just ordered 5 tons of fuel. The payload, in other words, our passengers and baggage, the maximum we can put on is 31.5 tons. We only have just under 11.8, and the total maximum takeoff that we could do ever is 79 tons. But today should be 59.3. We round that up, 59.3. And the center of gravity is 24.7. So these numbers are important: 59.3 and 24.7. 59.3 and 24.7. So by placing that in there, we tell it now we did take 5 tons of fuel, and watch all the numbers appear. Gives a takeoff weight of 64.1, and that is bang on according to our flight plan. Our alternate fuel today, we're looking at 20 minutes. Oh, it's not 20 minutes. We put this in 800 kilos, so 800 kilos, 0.8 of a ton. So we put that in there, and that gives us our spare fuel of extra. It's saying here 2 tons, but we'll see that a little bit more as we go along. Okay. So with the performance, then, last thing to look at is today we're going to be doing a flaps 1 takeoff, and it was 24.7%. It's very hard to see here on the wheel, but if we actually look down, we have 1 up, 1 down, but further on in we've got other numbers here. I can tell you that's 30 there, and that's 25. So 24 is going to be here. If we come across, it is actually between 0 and 1, halfway, 0.5 up. 0.5 nose up. So we place that in. We're going to do a toga takeoff, and then with the toga then selected, I do like this feature as well. V1, you just press that and place it in. V2, my apologies, VR, and that goes in, and V2 is 136. So that's all our performance in the box, and we are ready to go. Quick jump into the chat. Fly UK, can you hear them? How loud is the cabin in real life in the flight deck? Can you hear them clap? Sometimes you hear them clap. The landing's not good. Sometimes you can hear them moan as well. So it can go both ways. Sometimes you just don't want to tempt fate. But okay, so let's get this gun away. We said we're going below the line, so the mobile phone and iPad with takeoff data is now set. The windows and doors, we just put those up there. They will, once we put those signs on, I don't know what actually button triggers the armed, but once we push back, I do know all those doors will go armed in the flight sim. Thrust levers are idle. The parking brake is set, and the accumulator pressure is just checked here for backup, and the beacon is on. We are ready. Let's do it. Let's call the tug driver. Call tug, and here he comes. So at this point in time, we would certainly be, in real life, you would contact air traffic control and tell them, Shamrock 101, we're on stand 8, we are ready for a push and start. They would obviously give you clearance at that point. Once he's connected and lifted, we'll give him clearance down to get us underway. Okay, I think he's there. And let's get this going. Park brake released. Start the pushback. Okay, cockpit ground. We are starting engine number 1. Using the TOLUS HOTAS, not TOLUS, my apologies. The Thrustmaster HOTAS is very, very good. So I've got the Thrustmaster throttles here with our joystick, and gives you a great little bit of feel, reality, bit more texture towards the game, and something to get your hands onto when you're playing. So ignition is on start, and starting engine number 1. Having a look at this, just talking through what actually happens here. Once we put the engine number 1 in, and let's just stop the guy there, and stop the pushback and release the tug, and start the parking brake. Okay, 24%, we're looking at the N2. Once that fuel comes in, you should see the exhaust gas temperatures rising very quickly, and then we'll see the N1, the big fan that you see looking in at the start of the, looking into the engine, that's the one is starting to spin, and that's called the N1. So number 2, yes, Fly UK. Number 2, it can be started first. However, Airbus procedures actually says start engine number 1. Now, there's a thing in regards to the hydraulics and so forth. However, that will be for a later video where we'll do a hydraulic failure and show you how the whole system works and why you can actually start 1 or 2, because you actually will get hydraulic pressure in the other one. Just before I go any further, number 1 is started, and I'll just quickly jump into the hydraulics page. We can actually see the green system, the blue system is done by electrical. However, the PTU is not just started yet. When I start engine number 2, actually, do you know what? Let's leave that for another video, and we'll only get dragged down an old rabbit hole in this one. So engine number 2, let's go through the sequence again. N2 starting to spin, looking for 24%. Once that kicks up, looking at fuel flow then, exhaust gas temperature rising, and the N1. An interesting fact on the engine start sequence on Airbus, the FADEC, which is a fully automated engine control computer, it looks after the whole start sequence, any problems, and it will actually shut down the engine itself. Sometimes it'll actually give you 2, maybe 3 retries before it will actually abort the whole process, and that's it. I believe in older aircraft, possibly still on the 737-800. Any guys who are experts on that, please throw it into the chat, let us know. They have to sort of monitor those systems themselves, keep their hand on the engine master, and they see any of those figures that's going out of line, they'll actually close down themselves. So I'm not 100% on that, but what I can say is on the Airbus, it's a really, really, really good system. So we can see we're coming up to engine starts just once we get the available here. And there we go, engine is available, so we're in good shape. So starting from the flow after it, the pilot who's flying will now bring this ignition switch back to normal. He'll also come up here today. The APU is not required for departure. Sometimes we go into airfields that it is required due to hot temperatures or weather, but today it's not required. Engine anti-ice, it's not raining out there. It is 7 degrees though, but hey, do you know what? Let's put it on for departure and we'll switch off the APU. So the pilot monitoring then will arm the spoilers, make sure that the trim is set to 0. We did say flap 1 configuration today, and he will also set the trim. It's going to be about 0.5 up, so approximately around there. After that, all the checks are done, so let's start doing, the after flows are done, so let's do the after start checklist. So the engine anti-ice, we did switch it on. Engine mode select is normal. Rudder trim is 0, the pitch trim is 0.5 nose up. And we are, after start checklist is complete, so let's call for taxi. Manchester traffic, Shamrock 101 taxiing to hold short runway 23 right. So let's have a little look out. There's nothing on our left and nothing out there on our right. Okay. Brakes released. Taxi. Oh, we have an engine problem. Okay. Let's just go with one engine here. Taxing it on the one engine. I do have a little bit of an issue with thrust lever number 1. We'll get to that later on. Okay. Don't worry, Fly UK, taking me off task. Yeah, it happens all the time. So, as we do know, I do have a small issue with lever number 1. So while we're away from the stand, I'm just going to stop here. Let's set the parking brake. Oh, the joys of real life flying, huh? And let's have a little look. Once I just bring up the throttle a little bit, it gives me full. So I will, and I believe I can, go over here and calibrate. Let's just see how this works. Not only do we provide flying, we provide information on how to calibrate your thrust levers. aircraft configuration. Where is it? Detents. Here we go. Calibrate. So, reverse, full, reverse, idle, idle, climb, flex, toga. That looks, they look okay. Okay, let's get on with it. So, parker brake released. Continue. We'll taxi just with the right engine then. Just to throttle up the right engine. So this is taking us out towards the Kilo taxiway, and then we'll join Juliet all the way down to runway 23 right. So before takeoff checks, flight instruments are checked, the briefing and nav aids is confirmed and set for departure of runway 23 right. It is the Samba, climbing to altitude of 5,000 feet. Manchester and Honolulu VOR is tuned up on 1 and 2. Flaps is 1 is required, 1 is selected, and 1 plus F is indicating. The V-speeds and flex temp is 131, 132, 36. A toga gives us 82.5%, that's sensible. The ATC code is set, and ECAM memo, it's given us lots of blue, so max and cabin, we check cabin, and
please prepare for takeoff.
I think there's a little bit of more calibration needs to be done later on that joystick. However, it's okay for now because we'll use the auto thrust. We'll show you the magic of the Airbus and the way that will deal with. And take off, no blue. Ready to go. Fly UK, did you calibrate the thrust levers? Pressing the 2 auto throttle buttons at each side along the game. If not, so I didn't. I went in and I did it through the fly pad, which I thought was the right course of action. Funny you should say that. I actually heard some other simmers making that mistake also as well. So something I need to look at later on. However, I am confident once we hand this to the auto thrust, it's going to do its thing. So let's see what happens. We are using toga for takeoff. That's what, when I advance the left throttle is giving me. So I thoroughly believe it's going to work in the air. If not, we have problems. We're coming back in for a landing. That's why we have Manchester 23 right set up on our progress page. Give me a direction and give me a distance, and I'll be coming back in to land. So there's looking at the horizon there, there's nothing on the approach. I think we're going to get away straight away. A very, very red afternoon there. Look at that. Graphics absolutely fantastic in Microsoft Flight Simulator. 20 years ago when I first started, we were working on green wire graphics, and it's come along such a way. I still haven't got into everything that this sim can do. I'm only at it about 4 weeks now, and I have to say I'm blown away, just absolutely blown away. So we are going to be lined up. There's nothing on the approach. This is the hot spot. People will think you're going to need to go closer. We are cleared to onto the runway. So lights and strobes, and just put it down here. The PWS, we put it onto auto. Okay. We are ready for departure. And Shamrock 101, ready for departure. Yeah, I'd say it does need a little bit more calibration. It's actually taking me off the side. So let's depart and toga. Engine thrust levers not set. Continue. Climb, nav. All of the, actually, it's totally going wrong here. This is interesting. So 100 knots, checks, and rotate. And positive climb, gear up. Okay, let's test our theory. Autopilot 1. Thrust levers in the climb detent. Speed. So should target now 136 knots. We have a couple of issues. Let's see, can we just solve them? Fly UK, yes, I watched your stream the other night, and wow, you pulled a rabbit out of a hat. So let's just hope I can do the same. We've got a master caution, so master caution, just cancel that for the moment. It ain't a memory item. Let's just clean up the aircraft. We are flying on the departure. We are climbing accordingly. Climb power is set, so it has recognized an S plus increasing flaps 1. And just make sure it hits the lowest selectable speed coming up to meet us. We should go up past the green dot. Fly UK, it's not funny. It is not funny. You're not allowed to laugh at me. No more of these bad omens. Okay, so we're doing well here. So let's have a look where our master caution is, and it says that nav TCAS is on standby. So let's place our TCAS into operational mode, and it automatically gets rid of it. So there, crisis averted. We are on our way. I mean, we've only got out of the airport, and we're after having about 4 to 5 things go wrong in it so far. What else could go wrong? Speed out star. It's basically capturing, with that rate of climb, it's capturing the altitude of 5,000 feet. We did say not above 5,000 feet by Samba. However, we do not have air traffic control today, so I am just going to let that continue on climb up to flight level 190. Once we get 190, here's a little something I'd like to show Fly UK. I can push that button and I will get thrust climb, open climb. If I pull the button, I get thrust climb, open climb. I've pushed it. Now, once you see that white dot to the right hand side of the altitude window, notice my altitude turns into magenta. So basically, the computer is managing the profile. It's looking ahead and saying, by this point here, it must be at 3,000 feet. By Samba, it must be at 5,000. So that's why it will not go above 5,000 feet. For the purpose of the stream today, I just want to connect up the Samba points of flight plan discontinuity again. We just take that out of the way. So, for the purpose of the stream, I want you to look ahead here and just watch what's happening. I have 19,000 feet selected in the altitude window, and now it's it shouldn't be doing that. It should be staying at 5,000 feet until we pass Samba. Fly UK, if you can just go away from this channel. You're giving me all the bad vibes here today. This is so funny. It should be staying at 5,000 feet by Samba, and then once it passes Samba, then climb to flight level 90. But let's set standard. We're past the transition altitude. Standard is now set. We're passing 6,800. Oh dear, this is just too funny. Your first live stream, and whatever goes wrong can go wrong. While we're continuing on up there, let's have a little look outside. Let's take a bit of a breather. Look around. Incredible graphics there. Absolutely incredible. No, it's not making me feel any better, Fly UK. That's all I can say. So, I am just every single time I start this flight sim, I am just so impressed. Incredible. Kiddo, let's back in. Well, as we said before, no matter what happens, fly the airplane, fly the airplane, fly the airplane, and that's exactly what Airbus would want you to do. Okay. So we'll do a few little checks here. The after takeoff check. So the landing gear is up, the flaps are retracted, the packs are on, and we are pressurizing. We can see down here we are pressurizing. APU is off, and the bar reference as standard is now set. Passing 10,000 feet, lights are in, and the belts are off. Airport. VOR. Terrain not operational in the fly-by-wire. Standard set. We clear the rad navs. because we don't need them. They will stay hard tuned to Manchester. They will stay hard tuned to Honley should we require them. And if we had the secondary flight plan, as we mentioned earlier on, set to go back into Manchester, we would copy it now onto the active, because we ain't going back into Manchester anymore. We're continuing on looking ahead at this point in time. Standard also set on the standby. There we go. So, is there anybody going to bring me a cup of coffee? I think we're going to need it now at this stage. My God, stressful. So, while we're continuing on up to flight level 190, it is a short flight, so let's get ahead of ourselves. Looking at our arrival coming into Heathrow, we're going to be looking towards Honley, Tobit, Soppit, Westcott, Bovington. So those points all in a row. Tobit, Soppit, Westcott, Bovington. And basically on the profile coming in, there is constraints at Soppit. It does say flight level 150, I must be at that. Westcott, I cannot be any more than 220 knots. And then from there into Bovington, it wants us at flight level 70. So let's try and get the computer to comply this time. We'll do it on the way down. So that's correctly set up in the box. It says warnings, do not proceed beyond Bovington without ATC clearance. So we will go past Bovington this afternoon because we do not have any ATC. After that then we're looking at runway 27. We're going to land on runway 27 right in Heathrow. And we'll come back to this chart in a minute because a little bit more detail. Let's just have a look at how our flight is going. So we're climbing up. Oh yeah, we're doing very well. So having a look at everything here at this moment in time. This is exactly the way the flight should be going, without all the failures that we've had prior to this. However, jumping into the chat, some people turn packs before. I'm assuming packs off before takeoff. What is the correct procedure? Actually, both is the correct procedure. Sometimes you can have packs off, which will allow technically a little bit extra performance from your engines. Another way to actually get rid of the packs would be to leave the APU on, leave on the bleed air, and let that supply the fresh air to the cabin, so the engines again are not supplying air into those packs. So it allows for a little bit extra performance. There is multiple ways of actually doing it, and switching off the packs before takeoff is one way. I do notice on some of the streams guys switch off the packs, and that seems to be a little bit more common than the way we would actually do it in the way I've practiced, I should say, over the last many years, you know. So there we are, we're cruising at flight level 190. We are expecting to start our descent fairly shortly, so really need to get into that briefing, and let's have a look. We did check out the first part of it, that's all good, and now we're going to be looking at the ILS. I wanted to leave this plate on its own because there's a lot of detail in here. And starting up in the top right left hand corner here, the frequency of the ILS is 110.3, and when we identify that on a Morse code, it should give India Romeo Romeo. Beauty of the Airbus, it'll actually do it for you. The inbound course is 269 degrees, and the platform altitude starts at 2,500 feet. Heathrow may actually start you normally around 3,000, sometimes a little bit higher. So looking at the vertical profiles, if we were looking straight down on top of the airport, looking straight down, we can see we're going inbound of 269. That takes us all the way into the runway. If we had to do a missed approach, it takes us off into this direction, but we get into that in a moment. Here we're looking at as if we're standing at the side of the runway looking in, starting at 2,500 feet, and we come down on the slope. What is that slope? It's 3 degrees, so that will be a standard for most ILSs, and all the way down to the minimum. So our minima today for Heathrow, we're going to be doing a Cat 1 approach. Our decision altitude is 278 feet. We see nothing by that, we go around, and if we go around, it basically says we go straight ahead to 1,580 feet, or 0 on the ILS DME, whichever is later. So technically you need both. After that, it's a right turn to track 316. So there it is, there's depicted there, right turn to track 316. At that point, ATC will pick you up on the radar and they will bring you all the way back in. There's a small little picture of what we should be seeing in regards to the PAPIs and the high intensity approach lighting system, and basically that's going to be our ILS approach. Once we get down on the runway, we'll be turning left off. Do we have it here? No, we'll be turning left off the runway, and we'll pick up the taxiing from there. So that's our approach complete. When do we start descending? I get this question all the time. If we look at our altitude, 19,000 feet, let's forget about all the zeros. Let's look at the 19. Multiply that by 3. Whatever number you get there, it's saying 57. That's the time when we're 57 nautical miles away from the runway. That's a good time to start descending. Now, that's not direct line distance, track distance. So as you can see on the map I have here ahead of us, it goes off straight ahead, and it actually doesn't go straight to the runway. It goes a little bit around. So a little bit of guesswork. 57 nautical miles plus approximately around 10, so 67 nautical miles away from the airport, we would start our descent. And we're looking at that, we're coming up onto that now. This is the 20 mile ring, 40, 60 mile ring, and we're just coming into approximately around 70 nautical miles. Don't forget, we do have constraints. It did say they wanted us at 15,000 feet by soppet. So let's see what happens when we give it to the box. At this point in time, we now would start our descent. So constraints, so we can see the constraints going down. The constraints are all in magenta there. Constraints, terrain if it was working, and we'd put the TCAS on below. Also getting the ATIS. If I do know at Heathrow here, it's the wind was at 4 knots from the south. Temperatures is 5 degrees, and the QNH was 1011 when I last checked. And that precision height that we've seen off the charts, 278, we'll also place that in there. So now the machine has an idea what to expect when it gets down onto the runway. So now let's try the magic of the Airbus, which did not work earlier on from the constraints. I am going to now manage my profile by pushing on the altitude. Oh, now it's not even working. No, that's not even working. Oh dear. Oh, we have a real problem. So let's have a look at it again. Let's try. Are you going to go down? No. No. Oh dear. The autopilot is not working for us. Let's switch to autopilot 2. Let's see, does that have any effect? Can we get it to go down? No. Oh, there we go. Try that. Now we just have to change it a little bit. Let's go down. Oh, schoolboy error. I never actually changed the altitude before I put it in. Alright. Let's go down to flight level 70. Such a schoolboy error. Okay. What does the baro stand for? That's the baro reference. The barometer, basically the QNH. That's basically what we're looking at there. Now, just so we keep an eye on what's going on, we want to be at flight level 150 by the point of soppet. And we're hoping it'll bring back the speed to 220 knots by the point of Westcott. Let's see what happens. It didn't work the last time. So what we're expecting is now for the Airbus to level off at 15,000 feet. So let's see. I don't think it's going to, because this should be alt constraint, and it's not. It's in blue here. So let's see, can we give it the manage? So it's an open descent, no. So descent. So let's see what happens. It's probably just going to blitz straight on through. What you know, first time doing a stream and we get all these issues. Well, I hope that's them out of the way forevermore. Don't forget, if you want to see any more issues like this again, don't forget to hit the subscribe and the notification bell, and certainly let you know when we're about to board the aircraft. And you come along, join in, have a laugh, watch me make all these silly mistakes, trying to bring the real world experience into the sim world. Sometimes it just doesn't work. So is it going to capture? I do not believe so. Let's have a look. Well, we're just waiting on that. A good time now to be checking our systems here. Everything in the green is something what we want to see. That's pulsing because just the engines are back towards idle at the moment, expecting a little bit more pressure, but that's understood. Everything's in the green. If there was a system failure, we'd have it in amber and orange. And there we go, straight through 15,000 feet, I should say, straight through. Okay, so let it go to flight level 70. We can actually slow it down with our VS at this moment of time. I suppose air traffic control would expect that from us, so we'll give it 1,500 feet per minute. There we go. So there we go. Where are we at? Pressurization. Yes, everything's still in the green there. Again, there's no amber. Everything is low. Ooh, thought that was all gone there. Everything looking good with regards to the electrical system. Hydraulics, 3,000 in the green, blue and yellow across the board, which looks pretty decent. Conditioning, everything again all in the green. So we're all good to go. Let's continue. Just going back onto the question there by Fly UK. Sorry, bar reference. When you asked me what that was there, I got confused. Bar reference is basically our Cat 1 minima that we're going to use today. The plate legally says I can go down to 278 feet. After, if I do not see the runway or the legal requirement for a Cat 1, I must see the cross lights, I must see the runway environment, I must be able to basically see where I'm going to be landing. If I cannot see that, I must execute a missed approach. That is the lowest that we can go for a Cat 1 approach. There is Cat 2, Cat 3 approaches, and Heathrow has the facility that we could take what we call a Cat 3 approach down to landing and not requiring legally to see anything. It's very impressive. It's something that I should actually do a stream on another time, so maybe that's something you want to tune in for. It's very impressive seeing the Airbus land with absolutely no visual cues outside, and it lands perfect on the centre of the runway. So look, let's enjoy some of the scenery as we're coming into the Heathrow area. It's not very much to do now from here on in. Let's just bring up the ILS. That's not tuned in. Oh god, it's gonna... I don't think this is gonna work out this afternoon, but we'll just keep going. To tell everybody, I was watching a stream the other night, and the pilot, he got into a little bit of difficulty under severe pressure, I must say. And whatever could go wrong did go wrong. However, he stuck with it. He kept the flying, he kept the sky up, the ground down, and then after a while, through pure perseverance, the lights of the runway appeared and landed. I have to say, it was very impressive watching it, and also not just me, but there was another 2,500 people watching it live, but kept going, and that was good. That was really, really impressive to watch. So let's dive down actually a little bit lower, since we're not being constrained by air traffic control this evening, and let's see, can we get some of the views of London City. Yeah, you're very true there, Fly UK. The issues that seems to be infectious that's coming across, like, you know. So how are we doing? Quick review. Systems were all good. Oh, this looking straight ahead. Look at this. Look at this. Have we ever seen anything such? Oh my god, let's tidy up that flight plan there. So what points have we got in there that should not be there? We're going direct to Bovington, and if we just direct Bovington and insert that. No, that didn't straighten it up either. There. Let's try again. We'll take this one out, and there we go. There's a Bovington straight line, and we'll take from Bovington, connecting it up to the runway. And there's me saying how well impressed I was with the fly-by-wire system, and I've never seen so many issues in one go. Oh, I'm actually running development, or stable, actually running development, so maybe that's what's causing one or two issues here. However, Eyes on the prize here. We are below 10,000 feet, so we've got to give our crew a little bit of warning. We take the lights out also. Switch on the seatbelt sign, switch it off, and switch it back on again. They will know just we're passing 10,000 feet and we're approximately 10 minutes from landing. So lights are on, and performance. Those of you who are interested, a little bit more detail. We're now going to activate the approach phase, and basically that's telling the Airbus we are now going to be making a approach in the next few minutes. Watch the speed here. This is the managed speed that's in the profile from earlier on. I'm going to let this come down to 3,000 feet initially and give that thrust idle open descent. So it's going to, the throttles are going to come back, and then just going to continue on down to 3,000 feet. Set the QNH 0.7, I believe. Now, activating the approach phase. Once I activate this, watch the speed bug on the primary flight display. It disappears. Well, it hasn't actually disappeared. What it's trying to do is target the approach speed. We can see it here, 133 knots down in the bottom left hand corner, 133 knots. However, it will not go below, it should not go below the green dot speed, because that's our clean speed. So let's have a look at our performance. Our approach is 133 knots, and that's exactly what the system is trying to target here. When I take flap 1, it will give me then a speed. If you look at the card here, it will come back. Sorry, if we look at the card there, that will give us our flap limit speeds. And once we start coming down, 191 will be the next one, and then taking us all the way down to 147, 133. So we'll get into the flaps a little bit closer. So we'll just fly at 210 knots. We still, at this point in time, can actually select the speed and fly that little bit faster. So let's have a let's have a little look here. If we just selected speed, we can override the speed that they have. So the aircraft will accelerate back up to that speed, and the moment that we manage it, it'll go back towards the approach speed. The approach speed is calculated by the computer itself. It will know the weight that we put in earlier on, the fuel that's on board, and it actually has its gross weight here. So pressing switch, we shouldn't have. So 63.4 tons. It knows all that information within the profile of the aircraft, what speeds should be calculated. Also takes into account the pressure we placed in, the temperature outside, and binds all those up into approach speed for us. So it's actually a very clever piece of kit. So 2,000 feet to go, and we're progressing nicely. Where we're going outbound, we're going to make a right hand turn and then join the localizer for runway 27 right. Very impressive weather out there still at the moment. I do like the way when you have the landing lights on, it's actually reflecting back off the cloud. What I can say is that is pretty much exactly the image that you would see in real life. So we're going to manage the speed. As you can see, everything that we have selected is in blue. Anything that's in magenta is managed. So let's manage the speed again. And now it's going to try and target the 133 knots. When I select the speed, the 133 will disappear because that's not what it's trying to target. The only reason you see 133 here is that the magenta speed bug is not present. Once we get down lower and the magenta speed bug starts coming back into play, the number disappears. So basically it just shows you what it's trying to go for if you can't see the speed bug on the tape. After that, once it becomes visible, the number disappears. Wow, there's London there now in the distance. Since we have no air traffic control this evening, why don't we spoil ourselves and we'll actually fly downwind a little bit towards city centre. So let's take up the heading. So we're effectively coming off the arrival. And air traffic control probably at this point in London would start giving you a heading of approximately 115. They will send you out a little bit further and then turn you back in. And the reason that it's not going straight forward down to 133 is due to the rate of descent. It's due to the flap position, absolutely. It's due to the flap position. The Airbus will not allow you to stall the aircraft. I am planning on doing a video during the week where we'll bring the aircraft up to an altitude of approximately around 10,000 feet, and I will show you the configuration from thrust being idle, and then when we pull right back on the control column where the aircraft will not allow you to stall. It's a very, very, very clever piece of kit. And we can do that with full flaps, we can do that with zero flap and so forth. It is very impressive. So, looking at where we are now at this moment in time, I'm actually going to go for flap 1 to start slowing down a little bit. So watch the speed up there in the left hand corner as I select flap 1. So there's flap 1, and now it still wants 133 knots, but it's going to allow me to come down no lower than the S speed. There we go. So S speed, ILS is starting to come up here. It's identified as the India Romeo Romeo, which we picked up on the flight plan earlier on. Oh wow, look at that. Oh, fantastic graphics. So before I turn on to the localizer, at this point in time, actually let's just bring around a small bit first. At this point in time, we'll probably get vectored around towards the south, just past the southerly heading. And from here, if I select approach, we now in the PFD have glide slope and loc blue. So in other words, it's looking for the localizer and it's looking for the glide slope, and it's armed. So we will be coming around onto the localizer pretty shortly. There's the map actually depicts it here. So it's basically once we start if we extend that line further on out, once we cross over there, it will pick up the localizer. We'll see the localizer coming in, and we'll see it establishing here in the center, and the aircraft will actually turn itself in and lock on. And the same for the glide. There we go, loc star. Watch for the localizer coming in. Anytime soon. Oh wow, look at that. Sometimes it's very hard to keep your eyes in the cockpit when you have that kind of view on an approach. So there's the localizer, so it's basically telling us we're coming online with runway 27 right, India Romeo Romeo, and the glide is becoming alive. I think it's time now to start taking flap 2. So once we select flap 2, now look, it's given us, it's actually going to target 140 knots. The wind has just changed a little bit there, so it will recalculate the approach speed, and now it's allowing the speed to come down to the flap. The speed is for the slats. When we select the first stage of flap, if you replay back the video, you'll actually see the flap didn't come out. In other words, the F at the back of the where it's depicted at the flap position, only the leading edge slat came out, and that's an S speed. Once we go down past that, the S changes to F because a stage of flap has now come out, as well as the leading edge. So we're now down at the F speed. It will not allow us to go any lower than that until we select flap 3 and flap full. The more flaps we select, the lower it will allow us to go, all automatically, all fully managed. Glide slope star, we have captured now both localizer and glide slope, and we did say on that plate it said 3,000 feet for the missed approach should we have to go around, so we'd set 3,000 in the window. So basically we are all set, ready to go, 9.6 miles away, and we can't see the runway just yet. Keep the questions coming, that's what we're here for. So now we are fully established. If we look on the localizer and the glide, perfectly in the center, perfectly going down on a 3-degree glide, which is approximately 700 feet a minute, and that's actually indicated there. So that looks all pretty good. We are set up.
2,500.
And that checks approximately 6 miles. We'll take the gear down. Let's enjoy the view of cloud. Okay, so we continue now at this point in time. Normally on the approach into Heathrow here, you would have an aircraft 3 miles ahead of you and another one 3 miles ahead of him. So at this moment in time, you would have one touching down, you would have one in front of you, and you're still 7 miles from final. Most of their airports, you have the whole runway to yourself at this point. And don't forget, if they're very close to you in the front, you also have the same amount of traffic in the back. So once you land, minimal use of the runway, turn off fairly quickly, contact ground, and for taxi clearance down onto the gate. So we're approaching 6 miles now. Let's take the gear down. We'll arm the spoilers and switch on the lights. Looking straight ahead, oh, we can just barely see the runway coming in there. So the question asked earlier on there was about the bar reference that we plugged in was 278 feet. So just a reminder, if I get my altitude here down to 278 feet and I cannot see that runway, it's a missed approach. When you think of it, you actually are very close to the runway at that point in time. You're approximately around 0.3 of a nautical mile away. So it is very impressive. Time to configure full now. So flap 3. We still have an F speed there. And flap full. And now we see the F is gone. The airplane will come back to the target speed. At this point in time, I would normally take away the auto thrust. However, we do have problems with that. So I'm going to land with auto thrust in. However, we will disconnect the autopilot. Now, excuses. First time doing a live stream. Wind is not exactly what we thought it was. Under severe pressure. And I'm sticking with it. Okay. I must say, even looking ahead there, looking at the taxi lights, looking at everything, this is exactly what Heathrow looks like on the approach. This is it's ceasing to amaze me every time I go into a different airport with graphics. It's actually getting to the point you can go in and look at, see what an airport's like before you even ever decide to go there.
100 above.
Okay, getting a slightly little high on the glide. However, 2 reds and 2 whites. Land. We're on a 3-degree path
300.
Just bringing it back into profile.
200.
Wow, very impressive.
100.
Looks like we're losing a bit of the old FPS due to the
40,
graphics here.
30. 20. Retard.
Oh dear. And reverses. Spoilers, reverse screen. We're decelling. And brake. Oh dear. Okay, let's minimal use of the runway. Let's get off here. And we are down safe and sound. Need to have a look at that thrust lever there. Making sure that that doesn't just accidentally go off. So we'll just pull off the runway. I think if we just come over here and just stop, and we leave it there before we cause any more problems to anybody, including myself. We did it. We made it. I'll take that any day. Thank you everybody who's come along or sees these videos in the future. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, come along and see us causing ourselves problems. Why not? You can have the laugh. We're the ones under pressure. But for now, I'd like to say thank you very much, and very good evening, very good night. Don't forget, Formula 1 tomorrow. Who's going to win, Verstappen or Hamilton? Take care.